The chaos doesn't ease and it kicks the door down in the middle of a soul-sucking traffic jam. One poor driver, stuck in a sea of honking and red brake lights, slams his steering wheel in frustration. What the hell is going on up there? He grumbles, fully prepared to launch into a symphony of complaints. That's when something catches his eye in the side mirror. Strutting up the gridlocked road is our MC, moving like he owns the place. Not in a rush, not flustered, just smooth, like a boss who forgot to clock in. And the dude? Oh, he's a sight. There's the sword, for starters, casually slung over his back like it's a gym bag. But the piece de resistance? The flashy jacket with a massive golden dragon sprawled across the back, glinting under the setting sun. He's not walking, he's parading. Curiosity trumps frustration, and the driver rolls down his window, ready to bark something clever. But his jaw drops so fast he nearly swallows his gum. This isn't some cosplayer lost on his way to Comic-Con. No, this guy's vibe is pure danger, and every step screams, "Don't mess with me unless you're ready to find out why." Meanwhile, our MC, let's just call him Dragon Jacket for now, isn't even acknowledging the sea of gawking civilians. Nope, he's too busy with whatever mission he's on. Leaping onto the hood of a car without breaking stride, he hops across vehicles like it's an obstacle course built just for him. The driver stares, wide-eyed, barely managing a thought beyond, what is happening? Then, things get worse. The atmosphere shifts, hard. Up ahead, a red glow blooms across the road, lighting up the stalled traffic like the world's creepiest rave. The air grows heavy, charged with energy that raises goosebumps on the skin. Then it hits the crack. Space itself begins to tear open, and from the widening rift, red lightning crackles out like a warning shot. Dragon Jacket halts, his sharp gaze locking onto the spreading gate. He knows what's coming. "Everyone, move!" he shouts, his voice cutting through the rising panic like a blade. The crowd doesn't need to be told twice. Car doors fly open, people scramble over one another, and chaos explodes as they try to get as far from the gate as possible. And then the roar. The sound rips through the air, deep and guttural, sending shockwaves of fear through the fleeing masses. The gate yawns open fully, and from its glowing maw, monsters spill out snarling, black-furred beasts the size of SUVs, their glowing red eyes locked on the nearest prey. Dragon Jacket, however, doesn't flinch. He draws his sword, and blue mana ignites along its edge, crackling with raw power. As the first monstrous hound lunges, he steps forward, calm as a guy about to butter toast, and swings. The blade carves clean through the beast, splitting it in half before it even has time to regret its life choices. Another rushes in, and with a pivot and a downward slash, it too is reduced to two pieces. It's effortless. While he's putting on a one-man monster massacre, backup finally arrives. A squad of raiders, decked out in tactical gear and bristling with weapons, storms the scene. At their head is a blonde guy with sharp eyes, barking orders to his crew. But as they reach the front lines, the sight before them makes them freeze. "Wait!" the blonde murmurs, scanning the battlefield. The gate is wide open, monsters are pouring out, but there are no casualties, no shredded bodies, no bloodbath, just one man, standing amidst the carnage, cutting through the beasts like they're made of paper. Then the real nightmare steps out of the gate. Quadra Drake, the hulking, four-headed monstrosity, stomps onto the road, its massive claws leaving cracks in the asphalt. Flames smolder in its mouths, heat waves rippling the air as it snarls at its prey. Its aura alone presses down on everyone like a crushing weight, rooting the civilians, those who haven't managed to escape to the spot. The blonde raider pales. "That's from system number 43, he says, voice barely above a whisper. "A Quadra Drake, an advanced-level monster." Translation: this thing is bad news. For unprepared raiders, even Goldmark veterans, it's a death sentence. But Dragon Jacket? He steps forward without hesitation. The Quadra Drake roars, its head snaking in different directions as it scans for threats. Our MC tightens his grip on his sword, mana flaring brighter. Then, with a leap that defies gravity, he launches himself straight at the beast. The Drake swipes at him, but it's too slow. With a spinning slash, he carves through one of its heads. The monster shrieks, thrashing wildly, but Dragon Jacket doesn't stop. His strikes are precise, cutting through thick scales like they're tissue paper. Finally, with a deafening blast of mana, he delivers the finishing blow, cleaving the beast in two. The Quadra Drake crashes to the ground, its enormous body shaking the earth. Fire and debris scatter across the road, flipping cars and wrecking everything in the vicinity. The raiders? They just stand there, staring like spectators at a circus. The blonde leader's eyes are glued to the man standing amidst the wreckage, his jacket fluttering dramatically in the fiery wind. The golden dragon on his back glints in the light of the dying flames. Dragon Jacket wipes the drake's blood off his face with a flick of his hand, looking entirely too cool for someone who just fought a Godzilla wannabe. He glances over at the speechless raiders and flashes a cocky grin. "Lee Semin," he says, his voice oozing confidence. "One hell of a raider." And with that, the legend begins. Let's rewind. Before Lee Semin was cleaving monsters in half and rocking a golden dragon jacket, he was a mess. Not just any mess, the mess. Picture an out-of-shape, unmotivated gamer glued to his laptop and powered entirely by instant ramen. That's the Lee Semin we're talking about. If you squint, you might catch a glimmer of potential under the layers of self-pity. But even then, it's a stretch. Enter the samurai. Not just any samurai, this guy looked like he walked straight out of legend. Dark mana swirling around him like a living storm cloud. His every step radiated an ancient, warrior energy that practically screamed, "Get your life together." He wasn't here to mess around either. Standing before Lee, he growled, "Stand up. You are no coward." Lee froze, blinking up at the samurai like he was the final boss of a game he wasn't ready to play. But something about the warrior's tone hit him in the gut. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a statement of fact, like the samurai already knew Lee better than Lee knew himself. For the first time in forever, something sparked inside him, a flicker of confidence. Small but undeniable. The words weren't fancy or poetic, but they were exactly what he needed. Maybe, just maybe, this was the moment Lee's life finally started turning around. Fast forward a bit, and here's the rundown. After monsters began ripping through the world, humanity split into two camps: raiders and non-raiders. The raiders are the ones with enough guts or stupidity to fight back. To keep things organized, the Raider Management Bureau (RMB) was formed. Think of it as HQ for anyone crazy enough to take on interdimensional death beasts. Which brings us to Lee. He's sitting in the RMB waiting room, hunched over like he's waiting for detention. Sweat drips down his forehead as he fidgets nervously. It's time for his routine checkup, and spoiler, it's not going to end with a gold star or a lollipop. Lee isn't just any wannabe raider. He's a prospective raider, meaning he's awakened some aura but hasn't passed the qualifications yet. Today's appointment is all about the awakening judgment, which is a fancy way of saying, let's see if you're worth keeping around. Every prospective raider gets tested to see if their aura levels meet the minimum threshold. If not, well, good luck surviving military service, buddy. When Lee finally gets called into the testing room, it's everything you'd expect. Sterile, clinical, and so quiet you could hear your own hopes shattering. The centerpiece is the testing chair, a big, intimidating hunk of machinery that practically screams, "Welcome to your doom." Standing beside it is the examiner, a woman in a white lab coat who's already looking at Lee like she knows how this is going to go. She doesn't even bother with small talk. "All right, you know the drill. Sit down. Let's get this over with." Lee sighs, slumping into the chair like a guy walking to his own execution. The machine whirs to life, scanning him for aura levels. A few tense seconds later, the results blink onto the screen. 103. Same as always. The woman barely glances at the number before letting out an exasperated sigh. "Still no improvement, huh? You've been stuck at 103 since the day you awakened." For context, aura starts at 100. Anything below 150 is, frankly, pathetic. No amount of training has helped Lee move the needle, and it's starting to feel like the universe has it out for him. The examiner folds her arms, piling on the bad news. "Your aura's too weak for raider qualification. If nothing changes by your next checkup, you'll be shipped off to the military. They've already delayed your service once. No more extensions." Lee barely manages a nod, his face burning with shame. She keeps talking, offering counseling sessions like that's going to fix his problems. But Lee just mutters, "I'm here for the evaluation." Dodging her offer like it's a pop quiz he didn't study for. She shrugs. "Your call," she says, but her tone makes it clear she doesn't expect to see him in a raider uniform anytime soon. Lee stumbles out of the RMB, clutching his evaluation report like it's his death sentence. 103. The number taunts him, a constant reminder that no matter how hard he tries, he's still a failure. He heads home as the evening light fades, shoulders slumped under the weight of disappointment. His apartment is a disaster. Clothes, food wrappers, and gaming gear litter every surface. But he doesn't care. He kicks some junk aside and powers up his laptop, eager for a distraction. The screen lights up, and a notification pings from the Transcendent Network, an online hub for raiders and wannabes. Despite doubting its legitimacy, Lee clicks the link out of sheer boredom. His profile loads up. Unemployed bum Lee. The username stings a little, but it's not wrong. Shrugging it off, he dives into the forums. Most of the posts are chaotic flame wars between users with over-the-top names like Shadowless Slayer Damugwang and Dragon Lord Amunkazel. The comments are a cesspool of trolling, roasting, and general immaturity. For the first time all day, Lee cracks a smile. These people might be raiders, but their attitudes scream high school cafeteria drama. Amused, he joins the fray, tossing out a few sarcastic comments to stir the pot. Then, something catches his eye. Breaking news post about on Sungjun, a raider who just hit platinum rank. The headline? Solo mission. On Sungjun seals a Kazaya on Mount Buchan. The name hits Lee like a punch to the gut. This guy wasn't just any raider. He used to be on Lee's level. They trained together, competed together. But now, On Sungjun is a rising star, while Lee's stuck at the starting line. Frustration flares. Lee remembers when they were equals, back when he still believed he could be something great. Now, On Sungjun's success feels like a spotlight on Lee's failures. In a fit of anger, Lee rips down the sticky notes plastered to his wall, reminders of his training schedule and failed goals. He mutters to himself, trying to shake off the bitterness, but the weight of his own shortcomings is suffocating. Just as he's about to lose himself in self-pity, another notification pops up. This time, it's a message from wandering beggar Kim Bonghak, who wastes no time insulting Lee for his lack of achievements. Lee, not one to back down, fires back with a snarky roast. The comment section erupts into chaos as more users join in, including Grand Wizard Ileana, who casually mentions spending points to check out unemployed bum Lee. Then it happens. A pink portal materializes behind him, glowing like neon cotton candy. Before Lee can process what's happening, a stunning woman steps through. Grand Wizard Ileana herself, looking like a literal goddess. She scans the room, her gaze landing on Lee. "Are you really unemployed bum Lee from the network?" she asks, her voice dripping with curiosity. Lee freezes, staring at her like she's a glitch in his reality. "Well," she says, her tone playful but sharp, "I wanted to see who you really are. So, here I am." And just like that, Lee's very average life takes a hard left turn into the absurd. The whole vibe in the room flips the moment the transcendent lady steps in, practically glowing in pinks and indigos like she owns the place. And then bam, she's on Lee in a flash. Before he can even think about defending himself, a massive tree-like structure bursts out of nowhere, wrapping around him like some vengeful snake squeezing the life out of its prey. Lee lets out a strangled scream as the pressure closes in on him. She's barely trying, but she's got him locked down so tight he might as well be a ragdoll. The look on her face says it all. This is the guy who cracked the Transcendent Network? She's clearly unimpressed. As the grip around him tightens, she's probably cursing her bad luck, wondering how someone as weak and pathetic as Lee could have stumbled his way into something that should have been impossible. Meanwhile, Lee's flailing helplessly, his body screaming under the crushing force, his brain scrambling for a way to get out of this nightmare. She starts tossing him around like he's weightless, her voice sharp and cutting as she grills him. "Who are you? What are you doing here? How did you get access to the network?" For her, this is a joke, like poking at a bug to see if it moves. And Lee? He's the bug. To be fair, cracking the Transcendent Network is no small feat. Even seasoned raiders wouldn't dream of it. But Lee? He's shaking like a leaf in a hurricane, begging for her to put him down so he can explain himself. And surprisingly, she listens. She releases her grip, and Lee plummets to the ground, landing face first with a satisfying thud. Groaning, he picks himself up, rubbing his sore nose. Instead of cowering, though, he tries to flip the script classic Lee by demanding, "Who the hell are you anyway?" She arches an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed but maybe a little amused by his guts. Without skipping a beat, she cuts to the chase. Raiders. Was he lying about being one? Lee panics, stammering out a half-baked explanation. No, he's not a raider yet, but he's on his way to becoming one. Or, trying to. She doesn't look convinced. Her patience wears thinner with every stumbling word. She asks him again, this time sharper, like she's daring him to try lying. Desperate, Lee starts rambling about Aura, the energy that raiders use to hunt and fight monsters, and how he's technically awakened. This catches her attention, though her expression says she's still waiting for him to prove he's not a total waste of space. She gestures for him to show her this power of his. Lee lights up, thinking this might be his chance to redeem himself. He focuses hard, summoning all the mana he's got. But when it finally appears, the result is less than stellar. His so-called blue aura is more of a pathetic flicker, like a half-dead firefly in a jar. It sputters out almost immediately, leaving the room awkwardly silent. Ileana stares at him, her expression a mix of disbelief and disgust. She raises a hand to her face, pinching the bridge of her nose like she's physically in pain from how bad this is. "This is what you call mana?" she mutters, her voice dripping with frustration. Before Lee can stammer out an apology, her own mana flares to life. The entire room is bathed in a fierce pink glow as her power surges. It's massive, overwhelming, the kind of force that could level a city without breaking a sweat. The walls shake, the ground trembles, and Lee falls to his knees, clutching his head as the pressure crashes down on him. The neighbors, probably thinking it's an earthquake, start banging on Lee's door, shouting to check if everything's okay. Lee waves them off with a weak, "It's fine," but his voice cracks, not convincing anyone. He shoots a panicked glance at Ileana, silently begging her to chill before someone calls the cops or worse, before she kills him outright. Ileana is livid. She's just wasted her precious points she earned through endless battles and hard work on this weak, trembling guy who can't even summon a proper aura. She demands to know how someone like him could have possibly accessed the Transcendent Network. Lee, still cowering on the floor, mutters that he doesn't know. He blames it on his laptop. "I just opened it and there it was," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. This catches her off guard. "Laptop?" she repeats, tilting her head like he just spoke a foreign language. She eyes the device sitting on his desk, calling it a communication tool from his world, like it's some ancient artifact. It's becoming clear to Lee that she's not from around here, not from this reality at all. She gives him a chance to explain further, but Lee has nothing. He stammers some weak excuse about being a regular guy with a boring life, trying to dodge her questions. Her eyes flick to the sticky notes plastered all over his wall, but they don't give her any answers either. Frustrated, she leans back in his chair, adjusting herself like she's settling in for a long interrogation. She finally asks the one question that hits Lee the hardest. "What are you doing with your life?" Lee flinches like she just slapped him. He mumbles something about struggling, about how life hasn't exactly been kind to him. He tells her about being orphaned, taken in by uncaring relatives, bullied in school for his weak aura, and eventually dropping out. Now, he's just a guy stuck in limbo, playing games and pretending he still has a shot at being a raider. Ileana listens but doesn't seem impressed. After a moment, she leans forward, resting her chin on her hand. "So you've just given up?" she says, her tone almost mocking. "That's pretty pathetic." Her words cut deep. Lee stares at the floor, wishing he could sink into it and disappear. But then, unexpectedly, she softens. "You've tried, haven't you?" she asks, her voice quieter now. Despite the jab, there's something oddly comforting about her tone. Lee hesitates, then nods. He tells her more, about how hard he's worked despite his failures, how he's tried to push past his limits even though his aura has never improved. It's the most honest he's been with anyone in a long time. Ileana listens, her expression unreadable. Finally, she stands, brushing herself off. "Well, this has been enlightening," she says dryly. She opens a glowing portal, clearly ready to leave, but before stepping through, she turns back. "Don't post anything stupid on the bulletin again. If you do, I'll come back and you won't like how that ends." Lee nods furiously, grateful to see her go. But just as she's about to disappear, she pauses. "One last thing," she says. "The world is unfair, but that doesn't mean you get to sit here and wallow in self-pity." She looks him in the eye, her gaze sharp but not unkind. "You're human. Figure out how to live like one." The portal closes behind her, leaving Lee alone in his destroyed apartment. For a moment, Lee's struck by how human Present seems, despite his godlike status. In a strange way, Lee feels like they're two sides of the same coin, one scarred by battles, the other by a lifetime of failures. Lee puts on his dating coach hat, determined to give Perzen his best shot. Okay, first move, he says, pacing his room like he's giving a TED Talk. Hit her with something emotional, something that'll stay in her head. Say this, "Where have your wings gone?" Perzen's response is immediate. Wings? What wings? Lee smirks, already ahead of the game. Exactly. When she asks what you mean, tell her she's an angel who's lost her wings. It's cheesy. It's bold. It's genius. Perzen's blown away. You're a legend, he types, clearly impressed by Lee's ability to craft such a poetic line. Lee basks in the praise, feeling like he's finally good at something. Step 2, Lee ups the ante. If she smiles, drop this line next. Your smile is the reason my heart's gonna explode. Perzen's practically typing in all caps now, thanking Lee for his wisdom. Lee's grinning like a maniac, pacing his room as he feeds the sword demon line after line. It's surreal he's coaching one of the most powerful men in the world on how to flirt, and Perzen is eating it up. Thanks for watching, guys. Comment Flamingo and subscribe for the next part. By the end of their chat, Perzen promises to visit Lee if the advice works out. Lee laughs, feeling a warmth in his chest he hasn't felt in years. Somehow, against all odds, he's found his place in this strange, magical network. These aren't just gods and warriors anymore, they're people. People he's connecting with. And for the first time in forever, Lee doesn't feel like an outsider. But as the adrenaline fades, reality starts creeping back in. Lee slumps onto his bed, staring at the glowing petal on his wall. These transcendent beings, they do things. They don't procrastinate, they don't make excuses, and they don't waste time. Compared to them, Lee's whole life feels like a joke. The realization stings, and before he knows it, tears are streaming down his face. Frustrated, he stumbles to the fridge for a drink, gulping it down like it'll drown his thoughts. He flops back onto his bed, spiraling into a pit of regret. All those years, all that wasted time chasing a dream he might never reach. If his life was always going to turn out like this, why did he even bother hoping? But then, a spark of defiance flares up. Fueled by the drink, Lee sits up and starts typing furiously on the Transcendent Network. His fingers fly across the keyboard as he pours out his frustrations, his hopes, his fears, everything. It's raw, messy, and honest. And then, exhausted, he slumps forward and passes out cold. When he wakes up, his head pounding, he checks the forum, bracing for the cringe of seeing his drunken rant. Instead, his heart skips a beat. There are responses, not just from anyone from Legends. Lord Commander Gareth tells him to stop wallowing and change his life. Dragon Lord Lee Munkazer offers words of encouragement, sharing his own struggles. Sword Demon Perzen promises to visit him soon, and Shadowkill Damagwang fires him up with a no-nonsense pep talk. You can't get stronger lying in bed. Get up now, or you'll be stuck like this forever. Lee's chest tightens. They're rooting for him. They believe in him. For the first time in years, he feels like he's not alone. And then, a voice cuts through the room. Are you Bum Lee? The air shifts, heavy with power, as a new presence fills the space. Lee turns, his blood running cold. Standing before him is Dako Kyanma, the greatest martial artist in history. Impressive, Kyanma says, his voice deep and commanding. You may be weak, but you're no coward. Tears spring to Lee's eyes, unbidden. For the first time in his life, he feels seen. Kyanma steps forward, his presence radiating strength and purpose. And in that moment, as Lee stares up at the man who embodies everything he's ever wanted to be, something inside him shifts. Maybe he's not so hopeless after all. Lee looked like a grown man on the brink of an emotional meltdown, biting his lip like he might just burst into tears. Why? Because someone finally told him he's not a coward. It wasn't the words alone, though they hit him like a wrecking ball, yes, but it was also the sheer presence of Dako Kyanma, the legendary martial artist whose power felt like it could crush the world if he so much as sneezed too hard. Lee had thought Grand Wizard Ileana was the epitome of power, but compared to Kyanma, Ileana looked like a starter Pokemon, while Kyanma was the final evolution that could obliterate entire galaxies. Kyanma, as calm as a storm in the eye of its own chaos, spun around with an air of no-nonsense authority. Rack up points and check the tips board, he said. No explanation, no context, just a cryptic command that practically oozed importance. Before Lee could even begin to process what that meant, Kyanma added, I've got something big lined up for you. The anticipation practically buzzed in the air, thick enough to taste. But just as Lee opened his mouth to say something, anything, Kianma was gone. Just like that. 1 second, Lee was standing next to the man who embodied raw power, and the next, he was face first on the floor of his messy apartment. He scrambled to his feet, groggy and disoriented, like he'd just been kicked out of a dream. But the cut on his arm from earlier, still there. And the pain? Oh, it was real. Lee winced, rubbing the sore spot and muttering, "Definitely not a dream." And then it hit him again, that phrase. "You're not a coward." It reverberated in his skull like the chorus of the world's most inspiring power ballad. His chest tingled, his whole body felt strangely light, and for the first time in ages, he felt like he wasn't dragging himself through life. Something had shifted. Feeling the need to do something, anything, he decided on the most profound, life-changing action possible: cleaning his room. And not just tidying up, we're talking about a full-on spring cleaning marathon. Hours passed as Lee scrubbed, wiped and sorted, throwing out months, maybe years, of accumulated junk. His kitchen sparkled, his bathroom could pass a health inspection, and his floor was so clean you could eat off it. For a moment, he admired his work, standing tall with an aching back and a sense of accomplishment. Then his eyes drifted to the mirror, and it hit him. The only trash left in this apartment was him. He shook his head, muttering, "Nope, not today." Kianma's words lingered in his mind like a mantra, and he made a decision. It was time to take himself seriously. He threw on some workout gear that looked suspiciously untouched, if we're being honest, and stepped outside, ready to sweat and grind his way to greatness. Except, he didn't even make it past the first round. 10 minutes into his run, Lee was sitting on a park bench, gasping for air like he'd just run a marathon. His legs were jelly, his lungs were on fire, and to top it all off, he'd somehow found himself demolishing an entire fried chicken meal. How did this happen? Even Lee didn't know. He stared at the greasy chicken bones in shame, the guilt settling into his stomach like a rock. "This isn't it," he muttered, wiping his mouth, determined not to let the day be a total loss. Lee forced himself up and tried running again. It lasted about 5 minutes. Once again, he was bent over, hands on his knees, panting like an overworked sled dog. He hated to admit it, but the truth was crystal clear. He wasn't going to make it on his own. He needed help. That's when he saw it. A gym poster taped to a nearby lamppost, featuring a hulking guy flexing like he could deadlift a bus. Bold letters beneath the image read, "Get in here, boys." Lee squinted at the poster, half expecting it to glow with divine light. Was this a sign? Maybe, probably not. But either way, Lee decided he couldn't ignore it. He marched toward the gym, hoping this would be the first step in turning his life around. The moment he stepped inside, though, his newfound confidence evaporated. The gym was packed with people who looked like they belonged in a superhero movie. Over in the corner, a guy who could only be described as a walking mountain was deadlifting enough weight to crush a small car. Veins popped from his arms, his muscles bulged, and his aura screamed, "Do not mess with me." Lee suddenly felt very, very small. Before he could bolt, someone appeared behind him. It was the gym owner, a tall, broad man with a thick mustache that covered half his face. The guy from the poster. He looked at Lee with a smile that was either friendly or terrifying. It was hard to tell. "You here to get serious? Or are you just sightseeing?" the man asked, his deep voice booming like thunder. Lee froze, unsure of how to respond. His mind raced for an answer, but before he could say anything, the man sniffed the air and frowned. "I can smell it," he said, making Lee panic internally. "Smell what?" Lee asked, voice cracking. "Fried chicken," the man replied, shaking his head in mock disappointment. "You reek of it." Lee turned beet red, stammering out apologies, but the man just waved it off. "Relax, kid," he said, clapping Lee on the back hard enough to make him stumble. "You ate? Good. Now let's burn it off." The man introduced himself as Coach Kim Deok-bae, the owner of the gym and, apparently, Lee's new tormentor. Kim didn't waste time. After a quick assessment, he ordered Lee onto the treadmill. "No excuses. You're here to work. So work." Lee obeyed, hopping onto the machine and starting at a slow pace. Within minutes, Kim cranked it up, and Lee found himself running harder than he ever thought possible. Sweat poured down his face, his legs screamed in protest, and his lungs felt like they were going to burst. Can I take a break?" Lee gasped, barely able to speak. Kim's response was immediate and brutal. No breaks. If you collapse, collapse. If you get back up, then keep going. But if you keep making excuses, you'll never change. The words hit Lee harder than any physical strain. His heart raced not just from exertion, but from the truth of it all. He'd spent his whole life making excuses, running from his own potential. Maybe that was the real weight he needed to shed. Determined, Lee pushed himself harder. The treadmill sped up, and for the first time he didn't back down. He leaned into the pain, embraced it, and kept moving forward. Kim watched from the side, nodding in approval. "That's it," he said. "Keep going. Even if it feels like you're gonna die, keep going." Hours, or what felt like hours later, Lee finally stumbled off the treadmill, legs trembling like jelly. He was drenched in sweat, his muscles aching, but something inside him felt lighter, stronger. For the first time in years, he'd pushed himself past his limits. As he left the gym, one of the massive guys from earlier clapped him on the shoulder. "See you tomorrow," the man said, his voice gruff but encouraging. Consistency is the key. Back home, Lee collapsed into his chair, utterly spent but strangely satisfied. He logged into the Transcendent network, eager to share his small victory. But just as he finished posting, he remembered Kianma's words, "Check the tips board." He clicked over, only to discover he didn't have enough points to access it. Frustration bubbled up, but before he could spiral, a notification popped up. His first quest was live. The task? Lose weight. Specifically, get under 100 kilograms. Lee stared at the screen, horrified. "Under 100 kilograms?" he shouted, his voice echoing through the empty apartment. Lee's grind is in full swing, and life has turned into an endless cycle of gym sessions, treadmill torture, and sweaty, pain-filled determination. His first big quest, dropping under 100 kg, is consuming his every waking thought. Coach Kim has him on a relentless schedule, barking orders like, "You stop only when you're dead," and surprisingly, Lee's eating it up. He's never worked this hard in his life, but he's all in. His mantra? No excuses. Today, he even managed to run a ridiculous 8.5 kilometers. By the end, his legs give out, and he hits the pavement with a thud, drenched in sweat but victorious. Somewhere, imaginary confetti is falling. Back at his apartment, Lee stands shirtless in front of the bathroom mirror, poking at his reflection like it's a science experiment. He's convinced he's lost weight. He has to have lost weight. His shoulders look a little less rounded, and maybe, just maybe, his double chin is turning into a chin and a half. He gives himself a pep talk in the mirror, flexing as if he's a fitness influencer recording motivational content. "Let's do this today too," he shouts, hyping himself up for what's next. Today's plan? Running outdoors. Light cardio along the stream, maybe some interval training, something new to keep things fresh. As he jogs, he talks to himself like he's narrating his own heroic transformation. "Yep, this is it. I'm gonna transcend for real," he mutters, unaware of how ridiculous he looks to anyone passing by. And speaking of passersby, that's when she shows up. The girl in the pink tracksuit. She jogs past him, catching sight of Lee in all his sweaty, blabbering glory. She remembers the first time she saw him. Her brain had clocked him as a wild boar charging toward her, all heavy-footed chaos and labored breathing. But now, he looks different. Not by much, but enough to notice. He's still a mess, but there's progress in that mess, and it's oddly impressive. Lee doesn't notice her lingering glance as he makes his way to the chin-up bar. Chin-ups, the bane of his existence. He grips the bar, his arms trembling, barely managing a single pull-up. Every strained muscle reminds him of why he's doing this. It's not just about losing weight, it's about becoming stronger. About proving to himself and the world that he's not a coward. "I'm not a coward," he yells, his voice echoing across the park. People glance over, startled, but Lee doesn't care. He's in the zone, chasing the elusive promise of transcendence. Pink tracksuit girl, meanwhile, is watching. She's at the vending machine, taking a break and sipping water, but her eyes keep drifting back to Lee. There's something about his raw determination, his refusal to quit, that's inspiring. She decides to approach him. Why not? She walks over, smiling brightly, and says, "Hey, you're really working hard. That's impressive." Lee's mid-drink, gulping down water like his life depends on it. He glances at her briefly, mutters a barely audible thanks, and goes right back to hydrating. She tries again, mentioning how rare it is to see someone so dedicated. She's fishing for conversation now, curious about the guy pushing himself so hard. What's his story? But Lee? He's not having it. His mind's somewhere else entirely. The faint scent coming off her no. It's not just perfume. It's raiders. Lee freezes internally. He knows that smell. Raiders, with their superhuman strength and overwhelming presence, have a certain vibe. And Lee's had enough experience with their hierarchy to know where he stands in their eyes. During his trainee days, Lee learned just how brutal the raider world could be. Raiders treated non-raiders like dirt, the weak like they didn't even deserve to exist. Even the lowest-tier blue marks walked around with an air of superiority. Lee wasn't just avoiding this girl because he didn't feel like chatting. He was dodging the entire world she represented. A world where strength equaled worth, and weakness was something to be mocked. As pink tracksuit girl jogs past him again, she mutters something under her breath — "Fat uncle." The words sting like a slap, but it's the mocking wave she throws his way that really hits home. It's not just an insult, it's a reminder of all the times he's been looked down on, humiliated, and treated like nothing. She's no longer just a jogger in pink. She's part of that same world he's trying to escape, the world that defined him as weak. After his workout, Lee stumbles back to his apartment like a soldier returning from battle. His muscles ache, his body is drenched in sweat, but he's still determined. He collapses into his chair, grabs his laptop, and logs onto the Transcendent Network. The first post he sees? Grand Wizard Ileana. His heart skips a beat. Ileana. Scary and mesmerizing in equal measure. The first time they met, she'd been terrifying enough to make him question his will to live. But beneath that terrifying exterior was someone who'd given him a chance, who'd shown him kindness. For a brief moment, Lee considers messaging her just to say hi, but then he shuts the idea down. What would he even say? No, better not. She's way out of his league. Instead, he focuses on his quest. He steps on his scale, praying the number will finally be under 100 kilograms. The digital screen flashes. 100.02 kilograms. Seriously? Lee groans, slumping against the wall. He's so close, but it's like the universe is mocking him. Then, inspiration strikes. He bolts for the bathroom. If he can just lighten the load a bit, maybe he can tip the scale in his favor. A few minutes later, he's back on the scale. 100.005 kilograms? Are you kidding me? Lee yells, practically pulling his hair out. Desperation kicks in. He's stripping off layers of clothing, shaking out every ounce of sweat, even blowing his nose to get rid of every last gram. And finally, after what feels like a lifetime, the scale flashes. 99.99 kilograms. Yes! Lee jumps in the air, fists pumping. He did it. First quest cleared. The system rewards him with 100 points, and for the first time, he feels like he's moving forward. Now, it's time to spend those points. He clicks onto the tips board, eager to see what treasures await. The posts here are Wild One guys talking about walking on water, another's discussing dragonfire. Every post costs points to read, and making a post costs even more. Lee's jaw drops. This place is like a point-sucking black hole. And then he spots it. A post from Heavenly Demon Dako Kyanma. The title? Void Severance Ultimate Void Path. Lee doesn't hesitate. He clicks it, and the words hit him like a revelation. The post details a transcendent cultivation technique, one that could fix his broken aura and unlock his true potential. The method is intense, requiring complete focus and discipline, but if done correctly, it promises to restore his energy flow and make him stronger than ever. For a moment, Lee just stares at the screen, tears welling in his eyes. This is it. This is the answer he's been searching for his whole life. The frustration, the failures, the years of self-loathing, it all led to this moment. Without hesitation, he gets down on the floor, bowing in gratitude to the heavenly demon. The skill is called Taijutsu Flow, and it's about to change Lee's life forever. The supreme training Lee Semin underwent? Oh, it was far from a leisurely stroll through the park. When you're learning under Dako Kyanma, the greatest martial artist of all time, the grind is on another level entirely. This wasn't one of those try-your-best workshops, this was the real deal. And the results? Wow. Lee's mana levels have skyrocketed to heights that would make his old self weep in disbelief. The aura swirling around him is so intense it's practically auditioning for the lead role in a blockbuster fantasy epic. Right now, Lee's chilling by the canal, looking deep in thought, like a philosopher meditating on the mysteries of the universe. Truthfully, though, he's mostly obsessing over the curse that's been weighing him down for years. He's tempted to run the Taijutsu flow technique 100 more times if it means he can finally break free of it. The aura coursing through him feels electric, like he's been plugged into some celestial power grid. And oh, by the way, has anyone noticed the transformation? Lee's looking way leaner these days. Did he sign up for a martial arts program or a high-intensity fitness boot camp? Whatever it was, it's working. Back in Zen mode, Lee locks his fingers together and resumes his aura work, his focus razor-sharp. Just like Dako Kiyama taught him, he imagines his aura flowing through him like water, spreading like roots across every corner of his body. It sounds all philosophical and profound, and honestly, he's vibing with it. Lee zeroes in on the little blocks within his energy pathways, determined to blast through them like an unstoppable force. And then boom! His aura bursts out in a glorious explosion, lighting up the air around him. For a second, he's grinning like a lunatic, basking in his own awesomeness. But, as always, his excitement gets the best of him. He loses his balance and crashes onto his back with a loud thud. Classic Lee Semin. Still, he's too hyped to care. Lying there, staring up at the sky, he whispers to himself, "I can do this." Cut to Taesung Academy, a prestigious private raid training facility that's raking in cash from all the wannabe raiders trying to level up. Inside one of the training halls, a group of sweaty students is punching the air with all the determination of kids trying to impress their overly demanding coach. Said Coach Hwang Jong-hoon looks on with a critical eye, correcting form and barking the occasional command. Just another day at the academy. That is, until a student rushes in calling for him. "Coach Hwang, someone's here to see you." Curious, Hwang steps outside, only to freeze when he sees who's waiting for him. It's Lee Semin, standing there with a proud smile like he's been waiting for this moment. Hwang's eyes go wide, his brain short-circuiting as he processes what he's seeing. This can't be the same Lee Semin he used to know. The Lee he remembers was scrawny, aimless, and cursed. But the man standing before him now, lean, confident, and absolutely radiating power. Tears spring to Hwang's eyes as he stumbles forward. "Lee, I always knew you had it in you," he exclaims, throwing his arms around his former student like a proud dad at graduation. "I told everyone you'd make it someday." Lee awkwardly pats him on the back, a bit overwhelmed by the outpouring of emotion. Hwang's grinning ear to ear now, practically bouncing on his heels. "Call me Jong-hoon. Forget the formalities, let's grab a drink and celebrate." But Lee didn't come here for drinks. Nope, he's got something much bigger to show. Without a word, he steps back and unleashes his aura. The air around him ripples, the sheer power of it making Hwang's jaw drop. "Check this out, master," Lee says, his voice calm but laced with pride. "Tell me what you think." Hwang can't believe what he's seeing. Lee's aura is potent, vibrant, alive in a way that defies everything he thought he knew about curses. He quickly calls for his students to keep training while he and Lee head to the academy's laboratory. In the lab, Lee sits down in one of the high-tech aura measurement chairs, his fingers drumming nervously against the armrests. He's trying to play it cool, but inside he's a mess. What if the results aren't as great as he thinks? What if the curse is still there, lurking under the surface? "Relax," Hwang says, rolling his eyes at Lee's obvious jitters. "Just open your eyes and see for yourself." The machine whirs to life, and numbers start flashing on the screen. Lee peeks cautiously and then his jaw drops. His aura level is 1034. A month ago, his aura was stuck at a pathetic 103. Now, it's jumped by nearly 1000%. Lee stares at the screen, a mix of disbelief and joy washing over him. Tears prick the corners of his eyes. This isn't just progress, it's a miracle. Hwang claps a hand on his shoulder, grinning like a madman. "Lee, you did it. The curse is gone." Lee looks down at his hands, flexing his fingers as if testing the newfound power coursing through him. He's practically glowing. For the first time in years, he feels whole. But Hwang's not about to let him rest on his laurels. The coach's grin takes on a mischievous edge as he says, "All right, let's put this new aura to the test." "Test?" Lee asks, suddenly wary. Hwang nods. "There's a new student here who could use a reality check. He's cocky, arrogant, and thinks his aura makes him invincible. I think you're just the guy to knock him down a peg." Enter Eugene Say, a giant blonde guy with the kind of swagger that screams unearned confidence. His aura radiates power, but his attitude? Absolute trash. When he hears that Lee's aura level is only 1034, he scoffs. This is a joke, right? Is this some kind of hazing ritual? Lee doesn't respond. He just steps into the ring, his expression calm and unreadable. The match begins, and Yu charges like a freight train, aiming to end things in one decisive blow. Lee takes the hit on his wrist, no less, and doesn't even flinch. Yu's cocky grin falters as Lee counters with a punch of his own. But Yu's aura absorbs the impact, leaving him unharmed. That all you've got? He taunts, cracking his knuckles. Yu comes at him again, launching a side kick with enough force to send Lee flying across the ring. Lee lands hard, coughing as he struggles to get up. Yu laughs, already gearing up for the knockout. But then plot twist. Lee catches Yu's leg mid-kick. The room goes silent. Yu's eyes widen in shock, but before he can react, Lee twists, throwing him to the ground in a flawless grappling move. The impact shakes the ring, and Yu's cockiness shatters. With a burst of frustration, he twists his body and tries to kick Lee off him. But this isn't just any kick. His green aura flares around his leg like some kind of superhero glow effect. The crowd leans in, expecting a powerful move. But nope, his timing is so off it's almost painful to watch. The kick misses by a mile, and Lee steps aside effortlessly, giving you the ultimate. Is that the best you've got? Look, the crowd loses it. Laughter echoes around the room as they mock Yu's invisible kick, their reactions ranging from outright howls to poorly stifled chuckles. Yu's face? Tomato red. His humiliation is palpable, and you can almost see the steam rising from his ears as his anger boils over. But Yu isn't done embarrassing himself yet. Fueled by rage and embarrassment, he charges at Lee like a furious bull. Big mistake. Lee sidesteps with the kind of grace that makes it look effortless, like he's gliding on air. Yu's wild punch misses completely, and Lee retaliates with a mana-charged uppercut straight to the chin. Boom! Yu's head snaps back, his eyes rolling like a slot machine that just hit jackpot, and his legs buckle. He stumbles backward, dazed, before collapsing onto the mat like a marionette with its strings cut. The crowd gasps, but Lee, he doesn't even pause. He's already moving in for the finisher. Yu barely has time to recover before Lee has him in a submission hold, a move so precise and brutal that it looks like he's about to uproot a tree. Lee twists Yu's arm and leg into angles that shouldn't be possible, locking him in place like a human pretzel. The room goes dead silent, except for Yu's increasingly desperate grunts. "Let me go!" Yu snarls, his voice tinged with panic. His aura flares weakly, a last-ditch effort to break free. But Lee? He doesn't even flinch. With a calm, almost bored expression, Lee twists Yu's wrist just a little further. The sickening pop that follows is enough to send shivers through the crowd. Yu lets out a guttural cry, a sound that carries the weight of shattered pride and total defeat. The crowd collectively winces. Even the coach, who had climbed into the ring just in case things got out of hand, steps back, realizing there's no need to intervene. Yu's fight is officially over. Fast forward, and Lee is darting through the streets after the match, his mind buzzing with adrenaline. He can't help but feel a rush of pride. For years, he'd been stuck at the bottom, clawing his way through endless setbacks and failures. Now he's the guy who just made a cocky raider eat his words in front of a crowd. But as much as he wants to revel in the victory, he reminds himself to stay grounded. Yu wasn't exactly a world-class opponent, more of a cautionary tale than a challenge. Still, the win feels good. No, great. This is the payoff for 6 years of relentless training, of pushing past the pain, of refusing to give up even when the world told him to quit. Lee lets himself smile, just for a second. It's a rare, private moment of pride. The scene shifts to the gym, where Lee is finishing his workout. Every muscle in his body is shredded, gleaming with sweat under the fluorescent lights. He grabs a towel, wiping his face, when he notices a couple of schoolboys lurking near the door. They're clutching a leaflet, whispering and sneaking glances at Lee. The flyer? It's a before and after poster featuring none other than Lee Semin himself. The before picture shows a round, unmotivated man with no aura and zero hope. The after? A lean, chiseled raider in the making with abs that could cut glass. The tagline screams, "Transform yourself in 3 months." The boys' eyes dart between Lee and the poster, their expressions a mix of awe and disbelief. One of them finally works up the courage to speak. "Hey, mister, did you really transform like this in 3 months?" Lee turns to them, his lips quirking into a cocky grin. "Of course," he says, his tone casual. "What, you don't believe me?" The boys nod furiously, their faces lighting up with admiration. Lee chuckles, flexing just a little as he leans against the wall. "It wasn't easy," he adds, pretending to be humble but clearly enjoying the attention. The moment is interrupted when a shadow looms over the boys. It's Coach Kim, his towering frame and intense glare silencing the chatter instantly. "You too," Kim growls, his voice low and menacing. "You want to be like him? Then get ready to earn it." The boys look terrified, but they nod anyway, their excitement outweighing their fear. Kim leads them into the gym office, where muffled sounds of lecturing and paperwork follow. When they emerge, they look like they've just signed a deal with the devil. "They're joining the program," Kim announces to Lee, a rare smile tugging at his lips. "Think they can handle it?" Lee laughs, clapping one of the boys on the shoulder. "You'll be at war with your old selves. But trust me, it's worth it." Later, Lee hops onto the Transcendent Network, eager to dive into more advanced techniques. Today's target? Xing Yi Quan, a style that focuses on linear attacks and practical movements. While Lee trains, the boys watch from a corner, already questioning their life choices as they struggle with basic exercises. As Lee moves through the motions, his aura practically glowing, the boys realize something. This isn't just some guy with good genetics and a strong work ethic. This is a raider, a real one. And not just any raider, but a senior one who's been through hell and back. The realization hits them hard. Lee Semin, the man once labeled a loser and a failure, is now their mentor. He's the guy they aspire to be. And as they watch him, one thought lingers in their minds. If he can do it, maybe we can too. Lee's journey from rock bottom to role model isn't just inspiring, it's legendary. From bum to badass, he's officially the poster child for perseverance. And for the first time, he feels like he's exactly where he's supposed to be. Thanks for watching, guys. Comment Flamingo and subscribe for the next part. The price of fame. For Lee Semin, it's not all gym selfies and admiration, it's also the constant, burning sensation of being stared at. Not the "wow, he looks amazing" kind of stares either. No, these are the kind that make you feel like a lab rat under a microscope. Today, the culprit is that newbie the kid Coach Kim practically dragged into the gym last week. The kid is doing the exact same workout as Lee, which is somehow both impressive and completely unsettling. It's like staring into a funhouse mirror that just won't stop copying you. Lee's brain immediately goes into overdrive. Nope, nope, not into guys. Nope, nope, nope. Before Lee can figure out what's going on, Mr. Glasses, the nickname Lee has mentally assigned to this kid, marches up to him like he's on a mission. Lee spins around, startled, and blurts out, "What's up?" Because, really, what else do you say when someone's been creepily mirroring your moves for an hour? "I've been watching you," Glasses says, his tone way too serious for comfort. Oh great, here we go, Lee thinks. The words, "I've been watching you," are already awkward enough. But it's the smug look on the kid's face that really seals the deal. Then the kid adds, "There's something special about you." Lee's brain short-circuits. Special? What does he mean, special? Special how? The vibe has gone from awkward to outright weird, and Lee's already considering whether he needs to make a run for it. But then Mr. Glasses drops the real bomb. With a proud grin, he says, "You're a raider. You don't need to hide it, I already know." Lee freezes, blinking at him like he's just been handed a pop quiz on a subject he didn't study for. "Hide what?" he says, genuinely baffled. "I'm just here to curl some dumbbells, not join a secret society." But Glasses doesn't let up. "You don't have to deny it, I knew it the moment I saw you." And then, as if this conversation wasn't strange enough, the kid hits him with another surprise. The Raider qualification test is next month. "Wait, what?" Lee blurts out. How does this kid know about that? Turns out, Mr. Glasses isn't just some random gym newbie he's awakened to. Blue mana flickers around his hands, swirling faintly like it's auditioning for a fantasy RPG trailer. Lee does some quick mental math, trying to figure out how he ended up in this conversation. The kid explains that his parents are overprotective, big shock, and they want him to focus on academics instead of risking his life as a raider. But he's still sneaking in gym sessions, working on his physical skills behind their backs. Lee nods, half impressed, half confused. Okay, sure, that checks out. Kind of. The conversation shifts as Lee thinks about what it takes to become a top raider. Raw talent, countless hours of training, and relentless effort in the right direction. Sure, there's a handful of late bloomers in raider history, but the vast majority are grinders who've been at it since they could walk. It's no joke. Glasses, however, seems undeterred. His eyes burn with determination as he declares his goal to become a raider, no matter what it takes. His reasoning? Oh, just the fact that being a raider ranks as the #1 dream job for students across Korea, plus it's undeniably cool. Lee can't argue with that logic. Sensing an opportunity to mentor the kid, or at least mess with him a little, Lee asks if he knows how to manipulate his aura. Glasses nods, a bit too confidently, and Lee tells him to prove it. Right here, right now. The kid hesitates for a moment, clearly nervous, but then he takes a deep breath and lets his mana flow. To Lee's surprise, it's not bad actually, it's pretty solid. Lee raises an eyebrow, impressed despite himself. Who's teaching you? He asks. Online tutorials. The kid replies casually. Mostly from Sung-Jun. The name hits Lee like a freight train. Sung-Jun, that old friend. Memories flood in, and for a split second, Lee's lost in nostalgia. He quickly shakes it off, laughing to cover up the moment and offering the kid some advice on managing his aura. Before they part ways, Lee tells him they're cut from the same cloth, two guys aiming for the top. Glasses looks like Lee just handed him the secret to the universe. He bounces off, buzzing with excitement, probably off to brag to his friends about this life-changing conversation. Lee watches him go, shaking his head. Guess these kids might be onto something after all. Maybe I should step up my game too. Later, Lee's prepping for his next round of Dako Kyanma Fundamentals 101. His mind is racing with excitement, even as he groans about needing to whip his body into better shape first. But before diving into the hardcore training, he checks the Transcendent Network for updates. Sword Demon Perzen is roasting him about his pathetic dating life, again. While Grand Wizard Ileana has posted something cryptic and mildly insulting, clearly having way too much fun mocking him. Lee chuckles, shaking his head. Same chaos, different day. Time to focus. Lee decides to look up details for the upcoming Raider qualification test. But what does he find? Oh, just the wonderful news that this year's in-depth test is completely random. No past papers, no study guides, no insider tips, just pure unpredictability. Lee groans, leaning back in his chair. Why is everyone obsessed with this test? Shouldn't being a raider just be about killing monsters? He sighs, his frustration bubbling over. The written exam, the aura management assessment, the combat evaluation, all of it sounds impossible enough, but the in-depth test is practically a mythical beast in its own right. Just as he's about to give up, something catches his eye. A flashy marketing poster promising in-depth practice questions. The sketchy as hell, but Lee's desperate. He hesitates for maybe 2 seconds before grabbing his phone and dialing the number. Cut to 10 minutes later. Lee's already wired the money for the questions. No shame, no hesitation, he's gone full desperate student cramming for finals mode. The next morning, Lee's out by the stream working on aerobics, yes, aerobics, to improve his flexibility. He's mid-stretch when he senses a familiar aura. Turning his head, he spots Hermes' pink tracksuit, aka Kim Seonha. She notices him too, and for a moment, they just stare at each other. Seonha's expression shifts as she realizes Lee's looking different, leaner, stronger, almost unrecognizable. You look like a whole new person, she says, clearly impressed. Instead of showing gratitude, Lee pulls his classic move, acting tough. What do you want? He asks, brushing her off. Seonha, undeterred, apologizes for her earlier comments, but Lee isn't about to let it slide that easily. He's cold, his words sharp. Still, Seonha introduces herself properly, and Lee begrudgingly does the same. The air between them is tense, but there's a spark, now a challenge unspoken. Then Seonha drops another bomb. She's cheering for her company's rookie in the upcoming Raider exam. Lee raises an eyebrow, mocking her choice of words. Rookie? Yeah, she shoots back. Don't mess with him, he's going to be our company's next ace. Something clicks in Lee's brain. He smirks, his confidence surging. All right then, let's make this interesting. You're rookie versus me. Let's see who comes out on top. Seonha grins. You're on. The rivalry is officially set. Lee's not just in this for the exam anymore, this is personal now. Time to bring his A game. The bet is on Lee versus Seonha's rookie. The stakes? High. The consequences? Even higher. Whoever loses has to fulfill one demand from the winner. And knowing Seonha's smug, overconfident attitude, Lee can already tell she's cooking up something ridiculous for when her rookie wins. Too bad for her that's not happening. The vibe is icy as they lock eyes, the tension thick enough to slice with a sword. Seonha's thinking this guy was a walking ball of fat not long ago. There's no way he's passing. let alone beating our future ace. Meanwhile, Lee's giving her the mental middle finger. Underestimate me all you want, lady. I'm gonna blow your mind and your rookie off the scoreboard. Exam day. The big moment has finally arrived. At 7:50 a.m., the sun's shining bright, but Lee? He's dragging himself to the exam center like he's mourning the loss of his favorite fried chicken joint. Barely awake. Zero enthusiasm, classic Lee Semin. But beneath the groggy exterior, there's a flicker of confidence, a spark fueled by the teachings of Demon Lord Kianma and Grand Wizard Ileana. After all, if they believed in him, who's he to doubt himself? Just as he's shuffling along, trying to blend into the crowd, he spots someone. Oh no, not him. It's Eugene Say, the blonde punching bag from Lee's gym match a while back. Yu's glaring at him like he's already plotting revenge. Lee's body jolts awake instantly, a surge of adrenaline wiping away his sleepiness. Nothing like an old rival to wake you up in the morning. Taking a deep breath, Lee straightens his back and strides into the building with the swagger of a guy who's definitely not freaking out inside. The written exam. The first hurdle is underway, and it's no joke. This year's written test is a beast: ancient languages, mind-bending logic puzzles, and tricky situational questions that make you question your life choices. Lee's working through it with all the calm of a pro, filling in bubbles like he's solving the world's easiest Sudoku. Around him, students are sweating bullets, their pens moving frantically as they try to beat the clock. Lee smirks, amused by the chaos. So much stress for no reason. Relax, people. For once, all those late-night cramming sessions are paying off. Finally, the clock strikes, and the superintendent, a grumpy-looking guy with glasses and a dad bod, steps up to announce the end of the exam. Drop your pens, he orders, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. Anyone caught writing after the bell will be disqualified. Cue the inevitable rule breakers. Some students, in a desperate attempt to finish, keep scribbling despite the warning. Bad move. The superintendent spots one of them, stomps over, and bam! The poor kid is pinned to his chair like he's just been caught cheating in Vegas. Did I not make myself clear? The superintendent growls, glaring at the offender. Being a raider isn't just about strength, it's about discipline. One careless act and your whole team could die. Remember that. Lee sits up a little straighter, taking mental notes. Okay, point taken. No funny business. Then, just as quickly as he flipped into rage mode, the superintendent softens. He thanks the students for their hard work, wishes them luck, and sends them off with a surprisingly kind smile. Lee watches him go, half expecting the guy to whip out a mug of coffee and start reminiscing about his glory days. After the written exam, the nerdier students cluster together, analyzing every question like their lives depend on it. Meanwhile, Lee's chilling in the corner, totally unbothered. He knows he passed. No point stressing. To pass the time, he decides to practice his aura manipulation. Sitting cross-legged, he focuses on his breathing, letting his mana flow. The cutoff for the aura test is 5,000, and Lee's comfortably in the 5,100 range. No problem, or so he thinks. A few students notice him and start whispering. What's he doing, wasting aura like that? One of them snickers. Another laughs, clearly amused. Lee ignores them, trying to stay zen, but those pesky, intrusive thoughts keep creeping in. He recalls the teachings of Dako Kyanma. The Supreme symbolizes harmony, yin and yang, heaven, earth, and humanity. Cultivate your aura, and stray thoughts will come, but let them pass like clouds in the sky. Lee tries, but the memories flood in. He remembers the day he told his non-biological parents he wanted to be a raider and how they believed in him without hesitation. The warmth of that moment pushes back the doubts clawing at his mind. Cultivating aura here? A voice suddenly interrupts. Lee's eyes snap open. It's the superintendent, waddling over with a raised eyebrow. Not the smartest move, the man says, crossing his arms. Aura cultivation should be done in a safe place, not in the middle of an exam hall. Lee immediately bows an apology, muttering a polite, "Sorry, sir." Surprisingly, the superintendent chuckles, clapping Lee on the shoulder. "Don't sweat it, kid. There are times when rules don't apply." He launches into a story about his younger days, training in forests crawling with monsters. "No breaks," he says, a hint of pride in his voice. "That's the life of a raider. You don't stop because it's hard. You keep going." Lee's curiosity gets the better of him. "Were you in any dangerous battles?" he asks. The superintendent laughs, clearly fond of the memories. "Every battle's dangerous, but there was one." He pauses, his eyes gleaming. "The gate subjugation. That one stuck with me. faced all kinds of monsters, but the Black Castle monster. He trails off, shaking his head. That thing wouldn't go down, no matter what we threw at it. Before he can finish, a secretary appears, calling him away. The superintendent wishes Lee luck, leaving him with a boost of confidence. Aura measurement exam. Lee heads to the first floor, his heart pounding. This is it. But when he gets there, he's greeted by a line so long it could rival a Black Friday sale. Great. As he waits, he overhears whispers about a female candidate who just got her aura measured. And the number? 30,000. 30,000. Lee's stomach drops. His aura is a measly 5,100. He suddenly feels very, very small. Who is she? He mutters to himself, already fearing the answer. What if she's the rookie Seonha mentioned? What if this is the person he's supposed to beat? Lee forces himself to stay calm, but deep down he knows. The road ahead just got a whole lot tougher. The corridor is buzzing with chaos. The news about Bang Yu-bai's aura level and eye-popping 30,000 has turned the hallway into a circus. It's understandable, though. Even top-tier raiders rarely break past 20,000. So for some random person to stroll in and hit 30,000 during the qualification exam? Yeah, it feels like someone's trolling. Lee Semin, naturally, is as curious as the next guy. Who is this powerhouse? What kind of superhuman upbringing did they have? As Lee quietly muses over it, the guy standing next to him casually drops the name. Bang Yu-bai. Oh, and she's not just absurdly strong apparently. She's stunningly beautiful too. Lee lets out a small laugh, his brain struggling to process that a monster-level aura wielder could also be gorgeous. Wait, Bang Yu-bai? That's a girl's name? And then it hits him like a cold splash of water to the face. No. There's no way this Bang Yu-bai is the rookie Seonha was hyping up. Right? Lee tries to shake the thought out of his head. There's no way someone with that level of power is a rookie. But the unease lingers. Lee, for reasons even he can't explain, decides to strike up a conversation with the guy next to him. So, anyone getting disqualified this year? The guy chuckles like Lee just told the dumbest joke of the century. Disqualified? You kidding? Everyone's scoring over 5,000. This year's class is on another level. Lee forces a tight smile, nodding along. But inside it stings. Just last year, 5,000 was his dream. He knows what it's like to scrape by, to barely meet the minimum standard while the rest of the world soars ahead. These kids, these overachievers, have no idea what that feels like. Finally, it's Lee's turn. The room where his aura will be measured feels all too familiar. For 6 long years, this was where he faced the same crushing disappointment over and over. He can already feel the tightness in his chest, the anxiety clawing at him. The attendant runs through the instructions, but Lee barely hears her. He lies down, eyes squeezed shut like he's praying to every deity he knows, bracing for whatever number will pop up. The machine hums to life, and Lee holds his breath. Then it happens. 7,180. His eyes snap open. For a second, he can't even process what he's seeing. 7,180. That's not just progress, that's a huge leap. It's real. The number is real. Lee sits up so fast he nearly knocks the medical officer over. 7,000. 7,180? He blurts out, his voice louder than he intended. The officer chuckles, congratulating him, but Lee's too hyped to care. He leaps out of the chair like he just won the lottery, bowing so enthusiastically you'd think he was at an award ceremony. Thank you. Thank you so much. He gushes, his hands clasped together like he's offering a prayer. The doctor looks mildly perplexed by Lee's over-the-top gratitude. After all, this is just another routine result for them. But for Lee, it's everything. They'll never understand the uphill battle he's fought to get here. Post-exam victory lap. Lee's practically skipping down the street, his phone buzzing in his pocket. A message pops up. How'd the test go? Still riding the high of his result, Lee immediately invites the sender out for lunch. This calls for celebration. Cut to the city center. A vibrant, bustling scene filled with people rushing between shops, shiny new cars humming along the streets, and a general air of energy and excitement. Lee's perched at a trendy cafe, sipping water, waiting for his friends to arrive. The world feels softer, brighter, more welcoming than it has in years. But just as he's settling into this rare moment of peace, his eyes lock onto a familiar figure across the street. Seonha. And she's not alone. She's strutting through the crowd with her crew, weapons in plain sight like she's auditioning for a raider reality show. Lee narrows his eyes, trying to figure out why she's flaunting her raider status so blatantly. Then he spots her. Bang Yu-bai. sword casually slung across her back like it's a fashion statement, aura practically radiating off her in waves. Lee's stomach drops. It's her. The 30,000 aura level girl. The rookie Seonha had been bragging about. Of course it's her. Thankfully, Lee's spiraling thoughts are interrupted as his gym buddies arrive. Their faces lit up with excitement. These two young lads have become his only real friends lately, and seeing them instantly lifts his mood. How'd it go? They ask, practically bouncing in their seats. Lee grins, leaning back in his chair like a king on his throne. Awesome, he says, his confidence palpable. What's for lunch? One of them pipes up. Pork belly, the other declares. And with that, the meal is decided. The pork belly feast is glorious. Plates of perfectly grilled meat, dipping sauces, and side dishes fill the table. Lee, in a rare display of generosity, tells the boys to eat their fill. This doesn't happen often, so go nuts, he says, flipping another perfect slab of meat onto the grill. The glasses guy cracks a joke, suggesting Lee ditch his raider dreams and open a barbecue joint instead. With your skills, you'd make a killing, he says, smirking. The other kid, not to be outdone, dramatically adds, if someone like you wasted your talents grilling meat, it'd be a national tragedy. Lee rolls his eyes but can't help laughing. All right, that's it. Who wants to get smacked? He says, raising the tongs threateningly. The table erupts in laughter, the boys practically doubling over. The vibe is light, carefree, a stark contrast to the stress of the exam. The cafe door swings open, and suddenly, the atmosphere shifts. Seonha walks in, her squad in tow. The room seems to quiet as heads turn, everyone instantly noticing the newcomers. Lee's heart sinks. Why now? Seonha locks eyes with him, her smirk widening. Well, if it isn't the guy who said he'd chew up my rookie like gum, she teases. Lee internally cringes. Did I really say that? This is Yubai, Seonha says, gesturing to the girl beside her. Yubai steps forward, introducing herself with a voice so calm and measured it sends chills down Lee's spine. He's trying to keep his cool, but the number 30,000 is flashing in his brain like a neon sign. Seonha leans in, her voice dripping with mockery. Don't forget our bet, Lee. I hope you're ready to lose. The meal wraps up, and Lee's friends, still riding the high of their pork belly feast, can't stop pestering him about the girls they just saw. Man, they were something else. One of them says starry-eyed. Lee, ever the wise mentor, tells them to focus on what matters. Looks don't mean anything, he says, trying to sound profound. Choose your friends carefully. But the night isn't over. As they head toward their next destination, karaoke, Lee's instincts suddenly kick in. The air feels wrong, heavy. A red glow begins to form behind them. Lee turns, his stomach sinking as he recognizes the unmistakable signs. Portal is opening. The air crackles, the ground trembles, and with a deafening roar, a massive gate bursts open. Out steps a Sinkus, a dragon-like beast radiating menace. Its roar shakes the cafe windows, and Lee's heart races. Run, he says, shoving the kids toward the door. This isn't just a monster attack. It's a disaster in the making. The beast stood there like it was gunning for the lead role in Kaiju. The sequel, Sinkus, Hostile Number 22, was a hulking dragon with the kind of swagger that screamed, I'm here to ruin your day. Its roar ripped through the air, loud enough to shatter windows and send shockwaves rattling through the town. Civilians scattered like ants, screaming, diving behind cars, or just sprinting for their lives. The streets were pure chaos. And Lee? Yeah, he just stood there, frozen, staring at the beast like it had just walked out of a nightmare, and honestly, it might as well have. His brain was screaming move, 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 but his legs were like nah, not today. He didn't even flinch as the dragon unleashed another earth-shaking roar. Nope. Lee Semin, raider in training, aura enthusiast, full-time spectator. He was about as useful as a chair in the middle of a stampede. Then the cavalry arrived. Iron Horse Company. Seonha's squad rolled in like a blockbuster action scene, all synchronized moves and over-the-top coolness. They weren't one of the big three guilds, but they had a rep for handling disasters like this with precision. The big guy with the shield stepped in first, absorbing Sinkus' initial attack like it was a game of dodgeball. Meanwhile, Seonha zipped through the battlefield like a streak of lightning, her blade slicing through the air as she zeroed in on the dragon's core. The rest of her crew moved like a well-oiled machine, backing her up with flawless teamwork. But because life loves throwing curveballs, a new problem arrived to spice things up. Jorgs. Hostel number 8, the Jorg, was what you'd get if a wolf and a hyena decided to have an angry baby with way too much caffeine. And there weren't just one or two of them. A pack of snarling Jorgs burst through the chaos, beelining straight for the fleeing civilians. Because, of course, what's a monster attack without bonus mayhem? Lee, still glued to his spot, watched the disaster unfold like he was binging a particularly intense Netflix show. People screamed and tripped over themselves to get away from the Jorgs. But one kid wasn't running. Inji, the teenage gym kid. Yes, that same kid grabbed a stick and whacked a Jorg in the snout, saving a panicked civilian. Lee blinked. Was he hallucinating? A teenager was out there fighting a monster with nothing but a glorified twig? Inji wasn't backing down either. When the Jorg got back up and growled at him, he kicked it right in the gut, sending it flying. Lee was both impressed and deeply ashamed. This kid, with zero training, was putting up more of a fight than he was. While Lee stood there, frozen in place, Inji was out there kicking ass. But wooden sticks and gutsy moves can only get you so far. Two more Jorgs closed in on Inji, their jaws snapping with a hunger that promised pain. One latched onto his shoulder, and the kid went down, blood pooling beneath him. Lee's brain finally caught up to the situation, and something inside him snapped. This wasn't just chaos anymore. This was real. And then, just as Lee was ready to charge in and play the hero, a metallic spear whizzed through the air, taking out the Jorg in one clean shot. The backup team arrived. The rescuers moved fast, dispatching the remaining Jorgs with practiced efficiency. Lee, still shaking off his paralysis, pointed to Inji. "Focus on him," he barked, his voice trembling with urgency. The healing team swooped in, patching the kid up as best they could. "Inji, hang in there," Lee said, crouching next to him. The kid, somehow still grinning despite the blood loss, gave a weak thumbs up. "I'm not dying today, don't worry." Meanwhile, Seonha was handling the last of the Jorgs like she was starring in her own action sequence. With a burst of blue mana, she unleashed an attack so powerful it turned the remaining beasts into little more than smoldering piles of regret. "Status?" one of her teammates asked as she wiped sweat off her forehead. "Fine," she replied, as if taking down an entire pack of monsters was just a warm-up. Then she turned her attention back to Sinkus, outlining a strategy to finish the dragon. "We hit the head," she said, her voice steady and decisive. "That's the core. Guanghai's team is backing us up. So we end this now." Seonha wasn't playing around. She scaled a nearby building with the agility of a parkour expert, leaping from ledge to ledge until she had the perfect vantage point. From her elevated position, she could see the entire battlefield and the weak spot at the top of Sinkus' head. Her sword flared with blue mana, crackling with energy. And then, in one clean, devastating strike, she plunged her blade straight into the dragon's skull. Sinkus let out one last, deafening roar before collapsing to the ground. The monster was dead. Hostile number 22? Eliminated. Seonha landed gracefully beside the fallen dragon, leaning against it to catch her breath. She was exhausted but satisfied. Around her, the Iron Horse team exchanged high fives and cheers. The gate was closing, the monsters were gone, and the day was saved. Or so they thought. As Lee sat cradling Inji's head, he glanced toward the gate. It was almost closed now, the swirling red energy shrinking by the second. But just before it disappeared, Lee saw something that made his blood run cold. There was another monster on the other side. A monkey beast. Not just any monkey beast. This was hostile number 1. The orc. The creature locked eyes with Lee through the narrowing gate, its massive frame radiating raw, brutal power. Lee's heart sank. This thing wasn't just a monster, it was a nightmare. And it wasn't done yet. As the gate sealed shut, Lee knew the fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The gate crackled with dying energy, shrinking inch by inch until it sealed shut, leaving behind the wreckage of Sinkus, hostile number 22. On the other side, the orc had locked eyes with Lee, its brutal gaze lingering like a promise that this wasn't over. Lee stared at the gate, his breath caught in his throat, the weight of that stare still crushing him. For a second, his heart felt like it had been ripped out and flung into the void beyond the portal. Then a voice broke through the fog in his head. Did the civilian make it out okay? It was Inji, lying on the ground, his face pale but somehow managing a grin. Lee forced himself to snap out of it, straightening up as he puffed out his chest. "Yeah, you saved them. Good job, kid," he said, his voice deliberately steady. Inji chuckled, though the effort made him wince. "It's what a trainee raider's supposed to do, right? No big deal." Lee nodded, plastering on a smile, But inside, the words hit him like a gut punch. Trainee or not, the kid had done more than Lee had. Inji had jumped in without hesitation, while Lee had stood there like a spectator at a disaster movie. He hadn't saved anyone, he hadn't even moved. And the memory of that failure? It wasn't going away anytime soon. The days that followed were brutal in their own way. The city moved on like it always did, the monster attack fading into the background as life returned to normal. But for Lee, there was no normal anymore. He couldn't shake the image of that day. The gate, the orc, Inji bleeding out. It played on a loop in his mind, especially during his workouts at the gym. The weights were supposed to help, but no matter how hard he pushed himself, incline presses, squats, even the punching bag, it didn't make the memories go away. One evening, as the clock ticked well past closing time, Lee was still at it, sweat pouring off him as he hammered out another set of reps. "Hey, it's late. Let's call it a day." Coach Kim's voice cut through the quiet, snapping Lee back to reality. Lee blinked, realizing he was the last one there. "Oh, right. Sorry, coach." Kim studied him for a moment, his expression softening. "Come on, let's grab a drink." Thanks for watching, guys. Comment Flamingo and subscribe for the next part.